Hi, this is Christopher Spera, and this is the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 74. The Mac at 40. That's a computer I'd like to. Recorded live Sunday, January 21, 2024, live from iTechGear Central. As I said, I'm Christopher Spera, the editor-in-chief over at iTechGear.org, and joining us today, just digging out from the outrageous slings and arrows of snow and ice, Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin. How are you, sir?
Well, finally, I'm okay. We've truly seen nothing but single-digit temps, some below freezing, and finally this afternoon, after 8 days, we're able to get out of our house for the first time. And as I mentioned to you guys earlier, I drank my last K-Cup this morning, so I'm
that's
sure
not good.
glad we got to the store. Yesterday evening, I asked Siri, I said, hey, Siri, what's the temperature outside? And she responded with, who cares? You're not dumb enough to go out there, are you?
Are you serious?
Yep. Something like that.
Wow.
Every now and then she pops in a smarty like that.
Wow.
She didn't say dumb. I think she just said, you really going out? Or something like that.
Wow. That's
it's definitely been cold up here
Google
too.
That, though.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's been cold just about everywhere. That voice,
but we
those
didn't
dulcet
get
tones.
the snow. We didn't get the snow like everybody else. We got some, but not as much.
Yes, those dulcet tones belonging to the contributing editor over at Gear Diary, former contributing editor over at Gear Diary, Pocket Now, and of course now iTechGear.org, Mr. Chris Gavula. How are you, sir?
What, me worry? Yeah,
I know.
I'm doing well, sir. Thank you. Just trying to stay warm like Mr. Larry, but at least I was able to get out of my house. I mean,
Yeah.
you know.
No,
and the car has heated seats, so that helps,
Well, hey, hot, you got to love them hot cross buns. That's all right.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
Yes,
live on
you
a
do.
hill too, so it's kind of our
Well,
fault to
yeah,
buy
that's
in
a
this
challenge,
place.
especially when you're in an area where they don't clear as well. So,
Nope.
here it's much flatter, and snow removal is a normal thing.
Yep.
Now, do you live at the top or the bottom of the hill, Larry?
I actually am the highest residence in the village in this area.
See that's a good
It's
thing
a bad
and a
thing.
bad
It's
thing.
pretty when it's nice and I'm looking at the Smokies and the Cumberlands and the
There you
lake,
go.
but other than that, it's not so good.
Yeah, not in the weather that you've been having, no, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, though, but last and certainly never ever least, the former contributing writer over at Gear Diary, currently the host of the Linux Link Tech Show and living in the Retro Arcade podcast, brother Joe McLaughlin. Joel,
Yes.
are you warm?
Yes, I actually am. We had like one day this week where it was in the 20s,
Okay.
and then it dropped down for the next 2 days down around 9 or 10. But now it's 22 and it's supposed to be 35 tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that.
There you
Get
go.
some of this. We only had about maybe 4 inches of snow. It was more of a cold thing for us than it was for anything else. So, but made it through with no significant damage, even to my head as I slipped and fell on the ice today. But
Ow.
and hit the head. But hey,
Ow.
yeah.
Ow.
But
Yeah,
I'm
really?
excited. I took a week off of the Retro Arcade, and I am going to be producing a show on the Portal series because I bought the Portal companion thing, which includes Portal and Portal 2 for the Nintendo Switch, which is about $20 right now. So playing through that again. I actually have it on the Portal 2 on the PC. I never had Portal 1, but that's going to be a first. But I want to. It's a significant game in Valve's history, taking off after Half-Life. So, and it's one that's well worthy of a show. So that's what we're going to do next week. So,
alrighty then.
And it's supposed to keep getting warmer for all of us, I think, right?
Yes.
Yes.
The next week or
supposed
so,
to be
we're supposed to get
somewhere
better.
near 40 over here in Chicago. So
Yeah, I understand we're going to get there later in the week, so I'm looking forward to it.
yeah.
A little bit of a thaw out.
Yes, that would be very, very nice. But you know what is also
but Chris, you know what?
what?
this cold, affects us more as we get older. And
It
who
does.
else is getting older?
I do, but who?
I think that would be the Apple Mac.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it has definitely entered the cougar era of computing.
Nice.
Thank you.
Oh, that was good. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Mac has turned 40. Larry and Joel, you guys were kind of pontificating or speculating a little bit.
Well, I think the only pontificating, Larry's 100% correct. With the if it wasn't for the Mac, we wouldn't have Windows, and we wouldn't have
Well,
a lot
don't
of
tell Steve
things.
Jobs that.
Yeah, right.
Well,
But,
and that's all. And we could all say that really we wouldn't have all that if it wasn't for Xerox and the Park
Oh,
Center.
yeah.
either,
That's
but,
true.
Which is where I was going with it.
Oh,
yeah.
were you? I'm so sorry.
That's
I-
okay.
It's definitely where this all came from, and it's amazing how many of those technologies we still rely on today.
Oh, it
Oh,
And,
Very
and,
interesting.
and by the way, before we get all mad because everybody stole everything from Park, the Xerox folks weren't exactly very good at
Marketing.
Well, it wasn't just that. The people that ran the programs at the time seemed to almost pretty much just give it all away. Like they
I was
didn't
going to
think
say
it,
keeping
they
their
didn't
mouth
think it was
shut.
important. Well, they didn't think it was important.
Right.
It was just things they were playing with, and so they all
Sure.
kind of just went,
What I found interesting when I first read that story, and you guys can comment more on that story itself, but I actually kind of dug further because I wanted to read about the actual evolution again. We've all probably read it in the past, but
Yeah.
seen it somewhere. But if you could summarize, and I will, the evolution of the Mac in just a couple of stages. The first version kicked off, of course, with that 40 years ago, that revolution of a human computer interaction. And that was when Steve Jobs said, this thing has to interact with a human. And then after that was its design period. And I think that was best characterized by when was the iMac? Late 90s, 98 probably. Anyway, that's when Steve Jobs, when restored as CEO, used the Mac to put Apple on the path to recovery and its ultimate pretty much glory. And I think the design acumen that they used back then and weaving that into the realm of software and the development of then Mac OS in 2000 or 2001. And then you had 2010 with Mac really moving more into a mobile environment, and then the iPhone, and then silicon. And all along the way, the one thing they say they've never lost sight of is that the computer and every device that Cupertino makes must interact with the human. That's all they've ever cared about, period. So I don't know, I just thought that was interesting because to me, I do think it's a more interactive device than most other devices.
Totally agree.
It's funny because there's almost two sides to that coin. And Joel, I think you brought a part of this before in side conversations, is that even beginning with the Macs, there was always kind of a walled garden to the approach to their process.
yes,
you did things their way. However, I will say that when you did things their way was based on a lot of studies about how people were interacted with machines. So it wasn't from out of the blue. Whereas from the beginning with Windows, it's like, okay, here's a bunch of hardware. We need to make it work together. And they sort of did it. And then you just sort of had to follow along. I mean, you just kind of had to go with it. They didn't really spend a lot of energy in, the interfacey, human-y side of the thing was always a secondary thought. It was always about the machine first. And it was a different spin. There's no question. And that carried over later on, as we know, into phones and other devices and gadgets.
I fully agree. But I don't think that Apple really cared along the way that people were calling them a cult, this, that, and the other.
I don't think they
Oh, no, not a bit.
Today,
No.
I was introduced the other day by a very good friend of mine who's really nothing but Windows. He wouldn't own an Apple thing at all. And he said, hi, this is Larry McJunkin, my Apple cult friend. He really did. I mean, that's the way they think of us.
Well, in a lot of this, a lot of people seem to forget the guy that was behind some of the design ethos of the Mac operating system at the beginning. Andy Hertzfeld was basically responsible for why things were the way they were interface wise. with the original Mac, and some of his ideas Apple's kind of fallen away from, but I don't think for I don't think that made it worse. But Andy was responsible for making a lot of it as consistent as it was at the very beginning.
But
Yeah,
they
and
needed
some of
a front man, and that front man was Steve Jobs. That was what his job.
Yes.
well, yeah, he was quote unquote the lead singer of the group, right? That's was his
Mhm.
thing, and he was the public face, and he did a very good job of that aspect of it. But he was a bit of a a hard taskmaster and a driver, and do it his way or the highway. I mean, he definitely it was that kind of guy. But
Yep.
sometimes creative leaders are sometimes that way,
Yep.
But it does sometimes the people that get run over, the Wozniaks of the world, the Andy Hertzfelds of the world. But the funny thing is, in all of those cases, though, we still remember them. We still know who they are. We
Yep.
still know what they did. And so he didn't run over them that much. I mean,
Well, and think about it this way: Andy Hertzfeld himself, and I hate to keep bringing him up, but after he left Apple, he started Radius. Who doesn't know
Mhm.
Radius? That was
Right.
from that time. General
Yep.
Magic,
Yep.
Which I believe had some hand in the Newton a little bit.
Yeah, it
here
was
and there.
PDA work in general. Yeah.
Yeah, and Easel. Anyone remember Easel?
Oh yeah.
Easel was the Nautilus file manager
Yes, it
for the
was.
Linux GNOME desktop. So he, in a lot of ways, he
I
made
forgot
not
all
just
about that. You're
Mac
right.
OS better, but he made Linux better too. So I mean, it's just that guy is, to me, is one of those. He's one of the very few I'd love to shake his hand before he passes. Unfortunately, he's 70, so that's probably not going to happen. But same thing with Steve Wozniak.
Yeah, it was an amazing team of people, though. I mean, really
Yes.
was. I mean, and you don't get that kind of collection of folks together often in this world.
That's very
You
true
know,
too.
something to be said for all of that. But the Mac itself, 40. Ugh. I remember
It's hard to
working with the
believe.
first ones. Yeah,
Ah,
we worked with the
yes.
first ones, so
I
it's.
remember it
And
well.
I remember playing with Elisa before the Mac came out.
Yep.
And
Yeah, that's
just
that was an
all
expensive
fascinating.
flop.
Well, it was too expensive for what it was. It really
Sure.
was hard to get people to buy into it. The ideas were okay, but the price point wasn't there. Uh,
No, it was
uh,
not.
Even the Mac was
Kevin,
considered expensive. So, but it was just enough in range that people bought it. So,
Yep.
yeah, I think
Yep.
I
And now
remember.
people turn the original Mac into fish tanks.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
It's true.
But keep in mind, they also effectively brought us things like the 3.5-inch disc. None of us have been
Yes.
using those at the time. I mean, we were all on bigger, floppier discs at the time that were much more fragile.
Oh yeah.
There are a number of things, that we now take for granted today. But well, they've gone now. They've come and gone already.
Mhm. Yep.
We're so far beyond that now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You don't have to take the floppy out of your shirt pocket anymore.
No, you don't.
You know?
But
I
we do still have
a few
USB
of them
drives.
laying around in drawers, and they're kind of fun to just hold, and they
Yeah.
really do conjure up some memories of old days. They
But
really
right now
Yes.
we
And
still
now
have USB.
kids make jokes like, "Oh, you have a 3D version of the save button."
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So
Uh-huh.
true.
I'll remember
But
that.
we,
That's a good
but
one.
now we have USB drives and SSDs, and we use them almost exactly the same way. So the actual technologies to do what we do definitely change and move, but the concepts are still kind of the same, and the concepts are still there. And a file manager's still a file manager, despite the way they've developed and grown. Those things are still, we still follow the desktop paradigm on a lot of our devices. We still, uh, uh, mice are still here. They're different, but they're still here. All those things have hung in there. So it's interesting to see where we are and where it took us. And
Yeah, where it's taken us is to something that we certainly didn't have back then, did we, Chris Spera?
Oh no. Not even a little bit. I know when we were actively working at WUGNET, man, I was overjoyed with Windows 95, Windows 98, which obviously was heavily influenced by Macintosh. And that was a huge a huge step forward from Windows, the three previous versions of Windows, three major versions of Windows, 1, 2, and 3.x, 3031 and
Well,
3
and one and,
1.
and one and two were bundled with apps.
Yeah.
It wasn't even separate. You couldn't even get it as separate. Not
Yeah.
really.
No.
You needed it to run Word and things like that. And it was like, and
Right.
it took so long to start and load.
I
And
know.
I remember working so hard with it. And I remember back at that point in time, when Windows started to become a thing. I remember wanting to change my work computer over to a Windows computer, and I was working at various universities at that time.
Mhm.
And I remember talking to my bosses, and they're like, "Well, what do you need this thing for?" And I said, "You have no idea." I said, "This is these interfaces, what you see on the Macs, what you see on Windows. This is where all this is going. You know,
Mhm.
this is where it's going to be." And they laughed. They actually thought I was full of crap at the time.
Yep.
And man, I
Well, you
wish I'd
still
had
are, but
money.
that's
Well,
beside the
yes,
point.
but I wish I'd had money to invest in things back then. You know, I was just
Oh my
poor,
God, you could be set.
poor young guy with no money. You know, at that point in the business. But
Now we're
Absolutely.
yeah,
poor old guys with no
now we're
money.
poor old guys with no money in the business. Here we go.
Very true. Very true. But that's a very legitimate point. And just I mean, think about it. I mean, you look back at the original Mac 128s, right? 128
Mhm.
kilobytes
Yep.
Yeah,
of RAM,
yeah,
right? Not
Mhm.
megabytes, not
and
gigabytes,
no hard drives, no hard drives.
kilobytes,
You
and
worked off
no
a
hard
hundred.
drive.
Yeah, you worked off of floppies. You know.
Right. You had to have a Mac SE, a Macintosh SE, to get. I think they were the first ones out with a hard drive.
Yeah, and that was a little later. It was a couple of
Yep.
years later. Yeah.
Yep, a few years later. But look at where we comparatively look at the Mac and where we started from, and now look at the Vision Pro,
That's where I was.
right? I mean,
And so he rolls.
I mean, it's kind of sort of like,
Nice segue.
it's kind of like flint and steel versus, the ability to conjure fire out of the air, right? I mean, it's almost magic. But the question that I have for you, Larry and Chris, is given all the success that we've had with other Mac devices, Apple's betting a lot on the Vision Pro. Is this thing going to be a success or not?
Well, I think you have two.
Before we even talk about that, I
Yeah.
think this is a good thing or a good time to just mention to our listeners that we are no different than you guys out there. We all have different opinions, so you'll probably
We do.
hear some here.
Well, possibly,
ahead,
yeah.
Chris.
You may be right. What I was gonna say though is what's interesting with these products, and before we discuss the merits or whether it'll succeed or not, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I think the initial thing is purely from a technology and hardware perspective, they've taken stuff that and Apple has traditionally done this. They've taken
Sure.
stuff that people are already doing in certain ways and forms and sort of refined it a bit. And it's
Sure.
clever. And there's a lot of little clever things that are here. There's a lot of very interesting technologies going on here. And from a purely the point of view of a technical piece of kit, the Vision Pro is a fascinating product.
Absolutely.
Now,
Yes.
I would agree.
it's a fascinating product. Now, follow on that with and so folks who don't know, it's technically Apple's AR, VR, virtual reality, augmented reality.
Spatial
They like to hang on.
computing
I was going
headset.
to say that they want to call it spatial computing, but really it's sort of a blending of those other technologies.
Agreed.
Is what I was getting at. So take it from what we already know, what we already talk about. But it's basically look at products like the Meta Quest, look at at some of the HTC products, some of the other products that are out there today, and this is
Mhm.
like all of that on steroids. So
Oh,
you can have
absolutely.
you can have the conversation about whether it's not worth the price that they're asking, which we'll talk about in a minute. The price is, but the reality is when you compare it with those other technologies and what's available and the level that those products are at the price point they're at, this is way above that in many, many, many ways. So maybe from a hardware perspective, it's worth it, but will people buy it? Does it take it out of the price range of what people can do? I don't know yet. That's part of the conversation I think we're all
Well,
going to have over the next few
well,
months.
I would
Yep.
say one thing. Apple is Apple, and we all know how successful they've been. So there's no denying that if Apple put this much money into the Vision Pro, you know in your heart of hearts, we all do, that it's probably going to succeed to some degree because
To some degree. Yeah.
they just didn't go out there and make this without asking millions of people somewhere. Maybe I don't know where they asked them, but they somehow in some way asked them. And if you look at Google's graveyard of things, well over 200 products dead. Apple has exactly 21 failures in that 40 years. So I don't think they're going to fail with it. I just think, for me, it's just right now, I don't have a use case. That's my only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
I
don't
think
say I love the idea.
and I
It's
think
great.
I think that's I think that's what they have to do here, Larry. I think I think we've talked about this a little bit on and off over the week, and I think
Yeah.
my gut feel is that this could be successful if there's no major gotchas found once it starts getting into people's hands, and if
Agreed.
people actually find that they like using certain features on it. All you got to do is have one of those, two of those features be something that people really, really, really like a lot, and it could be at least moderately successful. But the thing is, there's a I'm not going to say there's a learning curve. There is, because it does things a little differently than current products that do it. But what's more importantly, it's not even just a learning curve. There's that whole, you've got to get it into people's kind of mind space, into their, and Apple has a task ahead of them to figure out how to get that into people's conversation, and part of that
getting it into
and
their
part of that
mind is almost as hard as getting it on
but
their head, because I
part
hate
of
to even
that,
wear a pair of glasses, let alone
well,
wear this thing.
we can talk about that in a second too if you want, but that problem is part of why I think they start off by saying, oh, it's not AR, it's not VR, it's spatial
Right.
computing, because Apple saying things that way is what puts things in people's heads, because spatial computing is a very clever phrase. It's absolutely accurate with what they're saying. I get it. But and we all know it's really more of a marketing term than it is anything else.
Sure.
But the problem
Right.
is it's a good marketing term, and Apple is very good at spin. And
Oh, they've always been good at
and
spin.
so I think,
Yeah.
and they put it in a way that makes it sound like more or like better, than you might
They
have thought of
make you
otherwise.
want the product.
They
is
make you
what
want
they-
it, and I
do.
think they're very good at it. So if anybody's gonna, and I said this way back when we first heard this product announced, if a lot of people have tried it at this space and they've only managed to carve out a small niche, and I'm looking at you, Meta, and I'm looking at HTC, and I'm looking at some of the others that are out there, and
Right.
and they're not really doing a big market like you would think, or they're doing a market where people play a couple of games on it and they treat it as a gaming unit and nothing else. They can't do anything else with it. If anybody can make this succeed, and this notion and these technologies succeed at this time with the technologies that we have, it's going to be Apple. If anybody can do it. Now, will they do it? I think if there's no big gotchas, maybe. If somebody can figure out a product that is, if all of a sudden watching my movies on here is so much better than sitting and trying to watch it on my iPad, or watch it on my, okay, is watching movies enough to pay $3,800 for a unit?
Well,
Nah,
and
probably not.
Maybe you'll get it one use case at a time for you,
And
or
I
me,
think
or whatever.
I think that's what's gonna. I think that they've got to get it out there to see what sticks, but they're not like Samsung. Samsung will throw anything and everything under the sun out there and hope that something sticks. Apple doesn't work that way. They're more of a slow growth kind of approach to things. And when they do something new like this, there's always, I think, a period of time where we all go, okay, what? And I'm sorry, if you look back, we did the exact same thing when the iPhone came out. The people said nobody will buy a phone with no buttons. Nobody will pay that kind of money for a phone. And they said the same thing when the iPad came out. Nobody will pay the money for that thing. Why would you want that? It's just a big phone. And look where we are now, guys. I mean,
Yeah.
those two are form factors that we use all over the place, all the time, in lots of
iPhone
different companies'
makes the
products.
most money for Apple of any of their products.
So the point is, just because we don't have a use case today doesn't mean there won't be one.
I agree.
And so it's going to be, for me, it's going to be one of those, let's see what people do when this thing gets out there. It's certainly having initial success, but I kind of thought they would because right now it's a novelty. Everybody who can afford one is going to want one because it's a novelty, right? And Apple's very good at marketing. So they're going to want to buy it. But will that sustain? I don't know. We'll see what it does. but I have a feeling it's going to be a moderate success, and it's going to be more than what the pundits said it would be. But
Well, have you guys gone up to the website and actually looked at this in detail? Because this is where Apple, I don't know, I've been using Apple products for now about almost 25 years, not probably quite as long as Chris and Chris, but every time they come out with something like this and they put it in on a website, you can't help but want it. I'm looking
it's
for
beautiful.
a use case. I'm looking for one.
Yeah,
I can't find it.
And they've made it very now. We all know we've a lot of us have read these stories, and for folks who, if you haven't read a lot of the stories out there, there's a lot of stories talking about the complicated process for buying one, order one, because you have to scan your face because they want the face pieces to fit. And if you need lenses, because you have lenses, you can't wear your glasses with it. If you need lenses, you got to buy lenses. Although the lenses are not as overpriced as I thought they were potentially going to be.
How does it work with contacts, Chris? You know, I didn't read that.
As far as I know, it should work with contacts. The problem with glasses was the lenses are too close to you. Okay. So you can't get the glasses on under the headset.
Well, and your glasses probably wouldn't fit under the headset anyway. So
I think that's
it would be very uncomfortable. But that's the whole point. That's the point there.
If I wear contacts and I'm corrected to 20/20 or whatever,
yeah, you should be fine.
I shouldn't need any other.
Correct.
No, you shouldn't. That's absolutely correct.
Okay, got it.
So having said all that, there are things, but I think those are things around trying to get it right. I understand all that. People will get used to that. They'll figure that out. I don't think it's any big deal. I mean, you're going to wear this thing, so they want to make sure that the fit and finish are right. Otherwise, they won't be successful. I understand that. They understand that. And I don't think it's going to be as bad. There's been a lot of stories about how complicated it is. I don't think it's as bad as all that. They're going to have a lot of the pieces in shop. Some they won't. You'll have to order, but at least things like the lenses look like they're removable. You can put other lenses in if your script changes, or you have multiple people in your house that want to do this or want to use it. It's a first product. It's a first generation product. I think there's going to be bumps, but I think when you read the website, as you were kind of pointing out, Larry, if you look at the how do you buy kind of stuff, they guide you through every little piece of it so smoothly.
They're gonna hold your hand.
I mean, you get that quote unquote Apple experience that we used to talk about, years ago. Because people forget that, again, when the iPhones and things like that first came out, and there were first Apple stores, came out and things like that, there was a whole hand holding process that Apple was doing with you, and
it was still do this with Corvettes in Nashville. I mean,
you felt like okay, they're taking care of me for this price. They're taking care of me. Okay. And people like that. People buy into that. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see where it goes. I mean, I think we're talking about it on again, in a month, 2 months, 6 months, whatever, and see where they are. I think the big telling thing for me is going to be what happens at WWDC, which is usually, around the beginning of June, late May, early June. And how do developers react to it once it's been out for a few months? Because if not enough units sell, then developers won't develop and nothing will happen.
No.
But if enough units sell, or there's enough buzz around one or two apps, that might get other developers kind of going, well, gee, wonder what I can do.
And that's where Apple is now. It's in a bind. It's a chicken egg thing, and there's not enough apps out there right now for it.
Yep. Yep, it's going to take a killer app to make people really want this, and I don't think there is one yet. I mean, there's lots of things.
Might be the big pull here, more so than
maybe not. I mean, because it's more than that. I mean, it's not quite strictly a VR headset.
Yeah,
not quite strictly an AR headset,
but it can be used in either mode, and that's fine. I do think that the spatial photography and videography is interesting, only in the sense that what they've done now is the current models of iPhone can be used to take those pictures. So now they've already sort of sucked in other parts of their ecosystem into the larger mix, and they've given you a reason. Oh, gee, if I can take these pictures on my iPhone, I really wanted someplace where I can watch them. They're developing. They're sort of building a desire to use this thing.
Are they maybe building a wall garden, Chris?
Or no, I
Yeah,
think
of
they're
course
extending
they
the wall
are.
garden. I think they're extending. Maybe they're putting a pond in the walled garden. I'm not sure.
They're putting them rooms on.
Yeah, they're adding rooms to the walled garden is what they're doing. But they've always done that. I mean, the watch was the same way when the watch came
Sure it
out.
was.
You know,
Right.
everybody said nobody will buy this watch because who wants apps on their watch? I mean, you know,
Mhm.
time and a few functions maybe, but who wants apps? And here we are, and people actually do use apps on their
We
watch.
do.
It kind of
They
kind of
do.
surprises me, but they do. So here
Well,
we
there
are.
is one place that the Vision Pro won't be, and that's at the Infinite Loop Apple Store because that's closing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
I did hear that. I did hear
along
that.
with one in Hawaii, which I'm like, or wait, was it Royal? Wait, Royal Hawaiian? Wait, was that one on a cruise ship?
Ah,
Do not know.
but I think what's important is that this thing starts at almost $3,500.
Yep.
And if you pack it out, you're at $4,800.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
Someone
some.
said you're going to spend over 4,200 for almost any version of it if you start.
I think that's probably true.
Well, considering that, well, I know probably all of us will need the lenses. I know
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
But you know, so it's at
Well-
least an extra 200 onto that. So,
My-
and not
my
to
thought-
mention the fact if you want
Yeah.
the case, it's also another 200.
I am anxious, but I am anxious to go in. Well, but the thing is, a case and a couple other things are not even Apple made; they're third party. But I kind of want to go in just to see the demo. I know they say it's like a 30-minute demo. Love to see the demo. I know, like you just said, Joel, some of us need, we all need our lenses, right?
Mhm.
And I know that I can actually function quite high level these days without any glasses or lenses on. I use my glasses primarily for driving, whereas it used to be I needed them for more things. But as I've gotten older, my eyes have become actually better or less problematic. But what I'm getting at is I have found with certain things, like when I sit at my computer, I no longer wear glasses. So perhaps it depends on where the focal point is on these things, right? I'd need to try them first to see where the focal point is, because again, as I kind of mentioned in the pre-show, if I had to do what I should do today, I would wear bifocals, right? So what do you do with somebody who has bifocals in something like this? You can't really
Right.
address it. You've got to address a single focal point of some kind. So where is that focal point? Is it far, near? How does that work? So I'd want to try it without first, and then decide if I needed my lenses added to it, my prescription lenses added. That's the kind of thing I'd do. And I think it's going to change. What you're going to want to do is going to change depending on how this thing does what it does. And at this point, I don't think we know. So I would probably start by getting it without anything, and then go back and say, okay, I need these lenses, and then order the lenses I need if I do.
Or try, like you said, try it and then
Don't they
figure
have
out
a way?
exactly what other accessories you need, and then
Well,
go
I
get
think
them
there's
later.
I think there's a way of you testing as well. I think that's part of the process. You can
Yes, it
test your
will be.
vision as part of
It
that
will
process,
be.
if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So there are things going on, and they're going to handhold you. It's not going to be, there's going to be growing pains and figuring out how we do this, and it's going to be
I agree.
interesting. It's an interesting product. Well, we'll see where they go with it.
Yeah. And speaking of health tracking stuff,
And speaking of
Yeah.
which,
Joel, you had mentioned watch apps and whatnot just a few
Yes.
moments ago.
Well,
It really kind of got me thinking about the health tracking article that you had proposed
yes.
for the site. So why don't you
And
give
we'll
us
be
the
writing.
lowdown on this and what's going on?
All right. So to start it off with, I am on a weight loss journey. I have lost probably a little bit over 40 from my heaviest weight, and I'm using several different tools besides just my Mark One brain to help me along this journey. One of them happens to be Planet Fitness. I have a membership. I've had one for years now, and I had the typical problem where I wasn't using it, but so that's not a problem anymore. So some of the things I'm using, like I have a Google Pixel watch. I don't have the second gen. I have the first gen, which means that comes with both, technically comes with both Fitbit as well as Google Fit. I do subscribe to the premium Fitbit, and each one of these things that I'm going to talk about here have different things, and this is where we're going to go with an article. Is I don't think we have one app or device to rule
Oh
them
no, there
all
is
with
no
this stuff.
Lord of the
Well,
exercise or
no.
weight loss
and
apps.
doesn't it also change with Google's kind of merging of hardware divisions?
Everything, yeah.
Doesn't that
Well,
change a lot?
that's a good question. So Fitbit is pretty decent. I like it. But I think what Google needs to do, since Google owns Fitbit now, is they need to take all the best things out of Fitbit and add them to Google Fit and put Fitbit to the curb. Because it's very confusing. I get alerts from both because both are on my phone.
Sure.
So that's one thing. Plus, I also found too, like if you have devices that are not Fitbit branded, like if you don't have the Fitbit scale, which I don't, then you can't bring the data from your other smart scales into Fitbit. So that's kind of one negative with Fitbit. My scale does happen to come from Withings, or
Yeah.
Withing, or I don't know how you
Mine
say
does
them,
too.
but I like it. It's
Me too.
pretty good. It can bring in the step counts from Fitbit, which is a good thing. And it does work well with some of the other things I'm going to mention. But again, I can't bring that into Fitbit. Google Fit itself, like I said, it integrates with almost everything. Both Withings data and Fitbit data both show up in Google Fit. So right now, that's the closest thing they have to doing everything that I want.
Do we know, Chris? Maybe you know, because I know you have more than the rest of us. What happens in the Samsung ecosystem? Because they have their own stuff as well.
Uh-oh.
What happens in that space?
Yeah.
Well, there is Samsung Health, all right,
Right.
and there is a health app there. I see it. I see it about it. It is about as integrated as either Apple Activity or the on the Google Fit on the Google side.
Okay.
I do believe that it is about as integrated there. From a Samsung perspective, I do think that Apple Health has a
But
better overall
yeah.
UI, especially when it comes to integrating and
Well, and Apple Health
consolidating external health data from like your
Yeah.
doctors or
Right.
your
well,
medication.
but because Apple Health is also it's the game in town when you're on an iOS device, that means
Right.
all of the third parties play with it.
Right.
But I don't think that's always true on Samsung or on Google devices. I think it's hit or miss
Right.
depending on
It's very spotty. All
Right.
right. It is very spotty. I've always felt very constrained on
Right.
Okay.
either the Samsung or the Google side of things. You either play with what they provide you or you don't play.
Right.
Gotcha.
So now,
Right.
then the other things here too is if you have are a member of or subscribe to weight loss programs, like I subscribe to Noom, NOOM. So one nice thing with Noom is it does pull in the step counts from Fitbit. I think it also would work with Google Fit and the Apple stuff too. And the Withing, and the only scale that it seems to work with happens to be the one I have, the Withing scale. So that does pull in. Although yesterday I had a weird thing happen with it where I did weigh in on the scale, and for some reason it disappeared. Don't know why. So I went in and hand entered the data. So you can also hand enter the data into Noom if you don't have a smart scale or if you have another one. Okay, so then the next things I'm going to talk about here are things like blood pressure cuffs, glucometers. They can be made by various companies. There's our employer, I should say, provided stuff, and that's actually the ones I'm using. My company has basically a free program through Livongo, and I am a member of 3 of the things that they offer: blood glucose, where they sent me the meter, and free supplies.
Nice.
So my supplies are free. Whenever I run low, I can actually, right from the glucometer, I can actually order them because the glucometer has, I believe it has It's very similar to the Kindle, where it has like a integrated 3G connection. I don't know who provides it, but I know I don't have to connect it to Wi-Fi. So same thing with the hypertension and the weight. So I actually use 2 scales every morning because I want what is going into Livongo to be tracked too. The only kind of frustrating thing with at least with the Livongo, I don't know about. I've had some devices from Omron or Bayer. Bayer is usually the one that does glucometers. Theirs are more a physical connection. At least that's the one my wife had. But Omron is similar to how the cuff that I have with the Livongo. But one of the bigger frustrating things there is if I wanted to take a screenshot of the Livongo app just so I can show my progress and share that on Facebook or whatever, it won't let me. So I'm guessing it's probably because of HIPAA concerns.
Possibly,
but
yeah.
None of this data, the the blood sugar levels, the blood pressure, none of it can be pulled into pretty much any other app. Which
Yeah,
I
so
would like it if it
you end up a
was.
lot of silos then of information.
Basically, yes. So
yeah,
there's
that's
no,
a little frustrating.
which is where we're at with pretty much all the healthcare tracking. I don't know a whole lot about. I mean, I know that the Apple Watch does step counts. It does. It does pulse oximeter. Well, maybe
on some models,
maybe. So, but and other things too. But Chris, Chris Spera, well, any of the Chris's, I guess you both have Apple Watches. So what other things does the Apple Watch do that I don't know about?
well,
And how does it integrate with other applications, or does it?
Pretty much not. Mine doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Larry, it's kind of the other way around. So instead of integrating with other apps, those other apps just feed into Apple Health.
They just feed
they
into
do.
it.
Right. There's more of an integration there with Apple Health as
Right,
opposed to
not with the
directly
watch
communicating with the
itself.
watch. Right.
Right.
So yeah, so like you said, I have a Withings. I don't know how you pronounce it, but I have some of their products. I have their cups. I have their scale, and they all feed into their app, but they also feed into Apple Health directly. So it's a kind of a non-event. So yeah, you're right, and I found that's the interesting with Apple is everybody's into the rings, right? Everybody follows the rings, and that's become part of sort of the cultural landscape. People
You
know
play the
to
game.
follow the links,
Can
right?
you close
So
the
they've
ring?
gamified the exercise a little bit, and people will do that. People will do it that wouldn't do it before. So that's something that they brought to the table. It was kind of an interesting spin that people are actually into now. So I don't know.
Correct.
In some ways, I think they've got a more cohesive answer on Apple than other ways. But again, I don't necessarily credit Apple for that. It's more that is the only place to play the game. So
Yeah, I
Right.
think the other thing, and I know my wife is way into this a lot more than I am. I use it for several things, obviously steps and the basic stuff, and I use it for mindfulness and whatnot. But I know that for her, this really integrates a lot of different aspects of health into one place. And
It
I
does.
don't know that if the other solutions quite go that far. I mean, Apple Fitness doesn't just stop with a little bit of push-ups and
No, it
walking on a
doesn't.
treadmill. It really can go as far as you want to go.
Well, and it's got a ton of different
Oh, God.
activities to
Yep.
tie to it if you want. Almost anything that you could be doing, you can track.
And it takes into account your size, your weight, your
It
height,
does.
your
It
age,
does.
your heart rate, everything.
And I was just going to say, between the ECG thing being built in, between the the heart rate and the blood ox and all those things. I mean, I can see that while I'm doing whatever activity, regardless of where I am or what I'm into. It all kind of ties in very consistently, and that's nice. I mean, it really is. It does make
sort
make
of
it a little
beg
easier.
to have a little home gym with a big screen on
It
the
does.
wall, but you can do it without that.
Yeah. I don't hold
with
I
your
don't look at my
TV.
phone. I don't look at my phone when I'm doing it, but I know the data is all getting uploaded to my phone.
No, but the
I just
watch
look at the
has to be
watch.
on your arm is the deal with Apple. It's
The
not
watch
that,
has to
right.
be
You
on
don't
your
have to
arm.
look at it, but it's got to be there.
Yes, it does. You're absolutely right. And there's something to be said for that, but now they've rolled in sleep tracking and all that kind of stuff more so. They've expanded what it does. So it's getting, it's very, very interesting. I think what I'd like to see with all these devices, one of the problems is if they want to check my sleep and do my exercise during the day and my steps during the day, this thing needs to be going all the time, and it can't because you have to pause and charge it. I'd love to see them integrate, swappable batteries and these kind of things so that we can. Well, I know that sounds crazy, but the fact is, if you need to wear it all the time,
right?
But if you need to wear it all the time, they need to have a way that you can wear it all the time, right? Or at least almost all the time, with maybe a minute here, 2 minutes there, kind of thing. And swappable batteries or something.
I was gonna say I forgot to mention sleep tracking. Because technically now I have two devices, two, maybe three, because I also have my wife's watch, which I hardly count that because they haven't updated that thing in forever, which is one reason why I left it at the curb. But both my sleep number bed and my watch track sleep.
Okay.
The bed itself is probably, I don't know how accurate it is. Put it this way, I found all the sleep tracking is highly inaccurate.
I have to agree with you.
Yeah, none of it is good. I think the best one that I've read about was the Aura ring. That one seems to be doing a better job of it, but even then, it doesn't do all the things I'd like it to do.
No, it doesn't. I have an Aura ring.
I was going to say, I'm going to be fascinated to see what this next, because there's another generation of rings coming out in the next few months. I'm going to be curious to see what they're able to roll into a ring, because in some ways that's much less intrusive. The battery will last longer than it does on a watch. I mean, there's a lot of pluses.
The battery on the Gen 3 lasts about 4 days. All right.
Okay.
It monitors steps and exercise and sleep. The sleep data that it provides is really very interesting. It monitors your temperature, more temperature variations, all right, than anything else. Because if it were to actually present you with an actual temperature number, all right, you are this hot, all right.
Which
it would have to go.
Does it work with, Chris?
I'm saying again.
Which operating system? How does it interface with you? With your iPhone, your Mac?
Yes, through your phone. Your phone.
No, but which one? Which platforms does it support?
Either, right?
Either.
Okay, gotcha.
Android OS or iOS.
Got it.
All right. And it's if it were to report an actual temperature number to you, as opposed to a variation in temperature, it would need to run through all of the medical device certifications.
Well, that was the problem that Google had with the Pixels.
Right.
They weren't supposed to really state this is your temp. They couldn't claim it took temperature of humans.
Right.
Well, it also picks up, like on the sleep tracking on the Pixel Watch. That's the only way I can even though the sensor's already in there, I can't just on my watch say, what's my blood oxygen now? All right. The only way that I can look at that sensor data from that is through the sleep tracking. So that's one good thing. Is it does track that really when I want it to be tracked, because I want to know how my therapy is working.
Sure.
So,
sure. Now with Apple Watch and I believe some Wear OS watches, there is a Pulse Ox app that you can use to check your Pulse Ox right now. All right. It is rather touchy though. Indicating that you've got to, you really have to push the watch up on your arm, make it really
You're
tight.
supposed to hold your arm flat. You're not supposed to have your arm in a different position, at least not on the Apple Watch.
Right. You've got to push the watch up, make sure it's got good contact with your skin. There's no gap between your skin and the sensors on the bottom. And then you have to keep still and your arm in a certain position, maybe over your heart, etc. And the
Apple Watch does temperature too, but it's also buried for the exact same reasons that we just talked about, that it can't be. out there, obviously. So
Right.
yeah, there's all those
Right.
things. You're right,
Mhm.
but they're picky. These sensors are all picky if you really want to get down to it. But
Right. They're
Um,
very sensitive to alternative data or
yeah.
being interfered with gathering their data.
Well,
All right.
I'll give you a good example. You're right in the sense that they're about all this, in the sense that I'll get the other night I was in my bed, and I was looking at my heart rate, and I've been laying in the bed for a while. My heart rate was in the mid 80s. That
Right.
isn't my normal resting
Right.
heart rate. It's like, why is it so high? Not that that's dangerously high, but why is it so high? And so I went and ran the quote unquote ECG, and it said it was 68. Okay, who was right?
Right.
You know, which sensor was right here? Because obviously they were giving different responses.
No,
And
I
and
actually
that all
think it's
comes,
the same sensor. I actually think it's the same sensor. I
but
think the data is interpreted by the apps differently.
but it also
Okay.
comes down to, is this connected, or contact is good? Is it shifted? Is it
Right.
slid up my arm or down my
Exactly.
arm?
Exactly.
Is it able to see what it needs to see when it needs to see it? All those
Right.
kind of questions come up. I mean, there's a lot of variation here. And so I always said, you kind of look at it like the idiot lights on the dashboard of your car.
Mhm.
It's really good for a general sense of, oh, something's up.
Right.
Not very good for an exactly what is up.
Well,
Right.
and that's
Conversation.
exactly. I mean, because I can do the ECG on my Pixel Watch as well.
Exactly.
And it's not going to be tremendously accurate, and the same thing goes with. Now, I will say the Apple Watch with being able to detect AFib, that's actually a really good thing.
Yeah.
At least good enough to get
Well,
you to say, if it says,
and
"Hey, you're an
yeah.
AFib,"
and
you're
I
gonna
ran into that. So
right.
late last year, I had a stress test done, and I had my Apple Watch on while it was done, and within a few hours of it, the watch was continuing to say that I was in AFib. I'm like,
Right.
okay, now AFib is an effect that can happen when you're exercising hard. You can get that for a little while, but mine
Right.
wasn't going away.
Right.
But all it did was tell me that I had to go back to the doctor, and the doctor ran additional tests and said, yeah, you're fine. It's okay.
Right.
But point is, all it did was raise the flag to say, you might have something to look at here,
Right.
Right.
but it's
and
not
that's
always
the
exactly
whole point
right.
of,
Yeah.
and that's the whole point of that sensor and that app.
Exactly.
All
just
right.
enough to say, hello, pay attention to me,
Right.
Now,
Just
I
enough
think
to get you in trouble. Knows just enough to get you in trouble, but not necessarily enough to get you across the
Yeah.
finish line. Go talk to your doctor, which is always the best advice.
But these are definitely
Exactly.
all heading a lot of different ways with a lot of different products. And I'd love to see all of these products merge a little better than they do, but they're getting there. They're better than they used to be. They're not quite as siloed as they used to be.
Yep. I will say this. I think of all of them thus far, from what I've heard of the Apple Watch, and Chris, I'm going to rely on you to help me update the article with the Apple Watch stuff. But
Sure.
It looks like if they add blood glucose tracking, I think they're going to be a winner. Just because
that's going to be a tough road to hoe.
Yeah,
that's
because
gonna be tough
will.
not to
you
crack.
were talking about glucose meters being sort of tied in, but it's still traditional glucose meters, right? They're just
correct.
sending the signal via cell. They're sending it via Bluetooth, whatever. It's still, poke the needle kind of, even the patches poke the needle, so to speak.
Well, it is. It is to scratch the skin, but it's the same
know.
thing. They've got to draw some blood somehow.
Well, they don't.
Right.
That's what they're trying to. That's what the new generation stuff is trying to
I
do.
understand.
It's trying to use light to do that. But it's you're right. They're not there today. They're not even close
Not
today.
yet.
No. But all these sensors, half the things that these sensors do now. I mean, if somebody had said to us, 10 years ago that you could wear a watch that would know your blood oxygen level, we would have gone, yeah, right, with a laser. I mean, it's going to know your blood oxygen with a laser, huh?
Right.
How's that going to work?
Yep.
We would all have laughed at it. We would all said that's Star Trek. That doesn't happen.
Yep.
No,
True.
no,
true.
they would have. See, they're trying to do it with a laser.
Laser
That's
beams.
where everybody would have gone, right?
At least it's
That's
not a
where
shark
everybody
with a
would have
freaking laser beam.
Right.
All part of your Alan Parsons project. I know.
Thank you.
Okay. But yeah, so the point is this stuff, it's changing so fast, guys. I mean, it really is. And I'm glad for it. Especially as I get older, I want this stuff working.
Absolutely. And that's kind of gonna go where I'm gonna go with the article. I think this could be an article that I redo every year or so.
And we start, to think, guys, we started with "Help! I've fallen and I can't get up." Now look where we are.
Thank
right?
you. Yes, it did. Everybody that heard that is probably gonna, chuckling just a little bit like you just did, but it's absolutely true.
It's where a lot of this started. I
Yep.
mean, this is health
Mhm.
tracking at its basic. I know it sounds crazy, but that's
Yes.
really
Yep.
what it is.
Yes, it is. And we've come a very, very long way.
Yep.
But
And
you
there's
know what?
other things that are coming out too that are really exciting, especially if you
Mhm.
are under. I've been seeing ads mostly, but for basically like these sleeves you can put on your legs that will help you walk if you're weak down there. So like if you're
Oh, wow.
affected with MS and stuff like that. I forget what they call them. I keep seeing them seeing them in a Facebook ad.
Sure.
So that comes with a grain of salt, but still
Fascinating stuff. A lot of stuff coming.
that's some of the things that I think like one of the things I said at the and this started as an email, and I'm gonna try and mash that up into some sense of an article. But
Well, that's
what
awesome.
it boils down to here is we're not, I think, we're not to the point where we have Star Trek tricorders that we can look at ourselves and evaluate ourselves yet, or track those things entirely. And things aren't perfect yet.
Agreed.
But
Agreed.
it's
more than we had, that's for sure.
It's all more than we had, and I'd rather have these tools than not have them.
Me too.
And one of my goals here as I get closer and closer to retirement is I'm going to the Dayton Ham Convention this year. And one of the most popular things you see there, especially with hams, I would say probably Larry's age and older, are these blasted scooters. And I don't
Wait a minute, I'm not that old.
well,
Well, I'm
nice.
old. Yeah, I am. I
there
just
are
don't drive
guys, there
one.
are guys your age riding these things,
Gosh.
and I don't
Oh
want
my
to
gosh.
be I don't want to be one of those guys. So and
Yeah.
that's
You got to
where I'm
do the
going
right
with
thing
this.
then, right? You got to
Yep.
do the right thing.
Yep. And all the health tracking, care tracking is meaningless unless you follow the advice that Noom tells you.
Or whatever program you choose to follow.
I was
But
going to
yes,
say,
Correct.
right.
yes, absolutely.
And it's all going to require you to do things and to change behavior.
That's what it's all
And
about,
thus
guys.
far, that's where
I'm
I'm
telling
at.
you right now, it's all about changing the behavior. You got to get into those new habits. You just do.
And I'm not going to be the one thing I like, and I'll leave it off with one more comment about Noom, and then we can move on. Noom, the plan on Noom, and one of the reasons why I'm liking it a lot is it basically tells you that no food is canceled from your diet. If you want to have that piece of pizza, you plan for it.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've learned as well.
Yep.
Noom or no Noom.
Yeah. I mean, so or like yesterday I splurged. It's okay. It's okay. You can do that every once in a while, as long as you're not doing it all the time.
And that you take compensation for the fact that you're doing it.
Yep.
Well, I think the most important thing is you've taken that step and you're sticking with it, and we're all proud of you.
Yep.
Right.
Well, thank you.
Right. Absolutely, we are. So good on you. Good on you. I want to go ahead and I want to move us forward to the Galaxy Unpacked 2024 event.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't mean to bring everybody down. Galaxy devices are really, they're solid devices. They truly are. Each of us have had some exposure to these devices. Some of us have one or more. Some of us have had more than one.
Some of us have had too many.
So we've been around them. We're familiar with them. All right. So Galaxy, Samsung came out with the Galaxy S24 series of devices, which is the S24, the S24 Plus, and the S24 Ultra. And I'm including a comparative page in the show notes on where each device stacks up against the S24 series. And it really shows you, I mean, and I'm looking back as far as the S21 series. In terms of battery, they've been at 5,000 milliamps since at least the S21 series, which goes back a few years. There's not a lot of, and I'm just going to sum it up, and I'm not going to go through all of the specs here. Let you guys go and take a look at that yourselves. But what is interesting is that there really isn't a lot of change in between
No.
the S23 series and what Samsung unpacked last year, and the S24 series and what they unpacked this year.
And there wasn't that much difference with the S22s either. Not really.
There was a
No.
little bit. There was a
But-
little bit. I mean,
But between the 22 and the 23, there really was, it was little things.
They're a lot like
Right.
Apple in that regard.
Yeah,
Yes.
they've really kind
Yeah,
of
they are.
plateaued in some ways, and
yes,
Apple
and
has
that's
as well.
exactly the way that it is looking now with the S24.
So the big thing with the S24 is the AI.
Right.
Well, the biggest thing is from a spec perspective. All right. From a device perspective, the biggest change that I can see, all right, is the processor. You're going from a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2
Yeah,
to a
sure
Gen
enough.
3. All right.
Yeah,
and
you
that's the
do,
overall
right.
biggest change in terms of
And that's not
The
that
hardware.
dramatic a change, folks.
It is
No,
not.
it's not.
it is not.
It's a little
Um,
faster, but it's not,
It is.
beating the crap out of you faster.
No.
Right.
It's not. And when you look at, and I'm trying to find the changes in the camera. All right.
Yeah,
200
they changed-
megapixel.
There really isn't. Well, they had 200 megapixel in the S23.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
if- actually, if in the megapixels departments, didn't one of the lenses actually go down in its capabilities, but they're doing things
Um,
differently, so
They
that's
say
supposed
they
to
say it's a
make
10
up for it.
megapixel 3x zoom, as opposed to a 3x optical zoom. So I
Right.
don't know if that's now just a digital zoom, or
Yeah,
if it's in fact still an optical zoom, and they just kind of shortened it a little bit.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I understood it was a little bit down in a spec in terms of hardware, but the software did something to make it up.
Right. So they went a 10 mega, the S23 has a 10 megapixel 10x optical zoom camera. This one has a 50 megapixel 5x zoom. So more data, less zoom.
Less
Right.
zoom. Interesting
All right.
choice.
More data, less
We'll
zoom.
see where that gets them. I know the
Right.
tests are all starting to come out now.
Right.
The comparative tests
Right.
are starting to
Right. But as you said, the biggest thing that they've done, and I'm going to hand this off effectively to you and to Joel here, is the biggest thing that they really, really did and introduced was Samsung AI. And it's only
Yeah.
available on the S24 series. From what I understand, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, there's no plans to bring it to the S23 series. So this is an S24 series thing, and that's it.
and it's only for 2 years.
Well,
Right.
it's only
For free.
free. It's only free for 2 years.
Well, okay. So here's the thing. So there's a couple of gotchas in this whole AI thing. It's in mostly Samsung apps. So if you don't want to use Samsung apps,
You don't get it.
You don't get the features. But that's similar, again, that's similar to what Google has done with some of the Pixel features.
right.
If you're not on their
Right.
stuff wise, you're either behind a paywall or you can't do it at all. And this is a larger trend that I have a problem with. This whole notion of we're going to do it for a while and then not do it, or we're not going to give you this feature unless you pay more, but we're
Right.
going to put it in the app so you think you have it until you click on it and it doesn't work.
Right.
That model that everybody's starting to follow, and Samsung followed it in a big way with this, it bothers me. I think it's a terrible model, a
Yeah, I
terrible
do too.
approach to things. I wish that they wouldn't do it with this. I wish Google wouldn't do it with the Photos app and make you have, if you don't have a Pixel, you have to have Google One, or you can't use all the features in the Photos
Right.
app. Well, then just give me a version of the Photos app that doesn't have the features.
Right.
I would rather
Thank
you
you.
did that.
Thank you.
Don't put it in there. Make me think you got it until I click on it. It doesn't even say it's a premium feature. And when I click on it, then it says, "Oh, you can have this if you subscribe to Google One." I'm like, and I'm sorry, guys, but I kind of want to say "F you" in the background
Right.
because it pisses me off that they led me on. before
Oh
they
yes,
said
no,
no.
they shined you on big time. They
Right.
did.
And this is happening all over the place. I don't want to, I've given you two examples, but
Even with cars.
yeah, there you go. There you
Which
go.
we
But,
talked about BMW
well,
wanting to charge for heated seats,
and
even
and
though
if you
the
buy,
equipment's already there.
well, and Joel, you and I both know if you buy a General Motors car, you have OnStar, but only for a period of
Truth.
time, and then they start to fine you. They start to charge you
Fine
if you
you.
want to keep it.
Right.
They give you everything at
Exactly.
first, and then they take stuff away as
Right.
time goes on.
Right.
So everybody's into this model now. It's kind of where I'm going with it, and I think it's a terrible model. Just like I used to hate when games went to the micropay model. I absolutely hate that nickel and diming thing.
Oh my God. And it's
and I'm
free to
sorry,
play sucks.
I'm sorry,
It's
I am
so
not
easy
buying
to
another
rack up
subscription.
one heck of a bill with that model.
Yeah,
It
but I'm
is.
not
Which is
buying
why they
another
like it.
subscription. Of course I do, but I'm not buying more subscriptions. I can't keep track of the ones I have already.
Amen.
I don't need this.
Right.
So
Yeah, I will say,
to me, this actually turns me away from this device.
Well, not exactly. I mean, that's where I'm looking more like, this is in my wheelhouse. I would definitely look at this would definitely have looked at the S24 when it was announced. I'm not so sure anymore. So I mean, and other things, I will say, did the S23 have the titanium frame on the Ultras?
No.
Okay,
No,
so
it did not.
so Samsung went the same way Apple did. So we'll see how that works.
Well, they've done it before, and they'll do it again, I'm sure.
I'm sure. But and that's kind of some of the frustrating things I have with the phone industry in general is whatever Apple does, we have to do.
Yep.
So when Apple got rid of the headphone jack, the rest of the industry did too, and I'm like, that's a dumb idea.
It really is to rely solely
but the same
on
thing
Bluetooth.
even happened. It even happened in their computers when they got rid of the 3.5-inch floppy. Everybody else got rid of it.
Yep.
Right.
It was interesting. They when they do something, even though they weren't the market leader, everybody did what they did.
Right.
Yeah, why?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, but everybody does that.
Well,
and the other thing you didn't mention too is Samsung did announce the Galaxy Ring.
Oh yes, good point.
Which is we just talked about the Aura a little bit ago.
Yep.
But now they're going to have the same thing. No idea when it's going to come out.
And I don't even think we have a full feature set list on it yet.
No.
So
it looks interesting.
Yeah,
so
it does.
We'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But
But this gets back to what you said earlier, though, Joel. Even if they do release this ring, is it only going to work with the other series of Samsung products and nothing else?
Yeah, right.
That's. And I know. I mean, even like if you want to buy a Samsung, like a Galaxy Watch,
right?
It works really well with a Samsung product, but when you want to use it with any other Android product, you actually have to go through a couple more hoops to make it work.
Well, you gotta download their silly app, but
there's more layers involved to make it happen, and it's like,
right. Okay, so the skinny on the Galaxy Ring that was announced during Unpacked 2024, it generally reflects the appearance of the final Galaxy Ring product. It was the one that was shown, the prototype that was shown to some on-site journalists. It ships in 3 colors: silver, dark gray, and gold. It's sleek and minimalist. It's larger than typical women's jewelry, but it feels very, very light. The hardware is ready, and it could have launched with the actual S24 series, but they're still developing the software and are aiming for a bit later this year. No specific timetable. So the specifics that you're getting at, Chris, what's it going to do? How's it going to do it? What's it going to provide? What information will it provide?
Okay.
What will it integrate with, et cetera, is still up in the air.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm not surprised at that. It is interesting though, again, you're going to hear this, and you're going to hear AI over and over with the products, right? These kinds of things. This is where we're going with a lot of this stuff. But
I mean, they are saying, and these are all rumors at this point, but they're saying heart rate, heart rhythm, blood pressure, blood oxygen, skin temperature.
Nice.
Yeah.
Accelerometer for step activity, tracking based, etc. and
Okay.
what and the major things that other smart rings offer.
Okay.
I
Fair
guess
enough.
it's great for those who don't want to wear a watch, but I'm fine with wearing a watch, so I'm
Yeah.
not going to buy
Me
it.
too.
You know,
Yeah, I'm with you too. I'd like to be able to see what's going on. Whereas a ring, you're going to have something external to see what the data is
yeah.
collected. So I'm
Well,
with you. I
and I
kind of like
already
it.
my phone can take steps, my watch can take steps.
Yeah.
Almost every app that I use, that we just talked about, can take steps either by taking them themselves or importing it from another application. I don't need another device to do step
No.
counts.
So
Well,
Samsung has moved forward with all these products. I mean, they're moving forward, and I know that's coming out later this year, right? So,
right.
uh, but again, I think the thing is unpack my general reaction, and I think I correct me, guys, if you think I'm wrong, but my general reaction was kind of like, okay, whatever,
One
man.
It's
more.
there. I
Well,
mean, that's it.
Thanks
they're saying that this thing is going to cost somewhere between 279 and 549, depending on finish, et cetera, et cetera.
for a ring,
I'm sorry,
for a ring.
for a
For a
ring.
ring.
Right. And you don't necessarily know if this is going to work in concert with the Galaxy Watch series, if it can be used instead of a Galaxy Watch series, or how it all integrates
So
if you
for the
All
get
same price,
both.
integrated.
but for
So
the same price as I pay for a watch, but with no screen, I'm going to pay
right,
that kind of pricing.
more
Yeah.
or less.
Yeah, I got a
Yeah.
problem with
So
that.
I
Right.
don't know. I don't know. We'll see what happens with all of this. I will tell
Sure.
you that it's largely going to be services and software that prove the value of this thing. So we'll have to wait and see.
Always,
Yeah.
right. It's always about, what does it really
Right.
do for me when it's out there? Yeah,
Right.
I'm with you.
Yeah. All right. So I want to go ahead and move us to our Windows segment. But before we do that, I'd like to stop for this brief message. Hi, this is Christopher Spera with iTechGear.org, and I'm here to tell you that iTechGear.org and the iTechGear Weekly are on Patreon. Patreon is a platform for creators, allowing them to express their creative side in an organized, marketable fashion and earn a living or create a really cool kind of side hustle. You can create a community around your hobby of choice. You can gain followers. You can get members and supporters all along the way. You can create subscription products that, for a pledged amount every month, you'll provide to your members and followers. Setup is easy. Prices are reasonable, and you can have your pledges auto deposited into an account of your choice every month. With iTechGear.org, our initial offering is a monthly newsletter for just $3 a month. This is our initial offering, and we'll have other tiers and other products and other offers up in the coming months. Become a patron of our site. Grow with us, and we'll provide you with the tech understanding that you're missing right now. Join us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/iTechGear. That's www.patreon.com/iTechGear. And welcome back to the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 74, the Mac at 40. Now that's a computer I'd like to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to go ahead and move us to our Windows segment, as I said. And I want to, start it off with, the Windows 11 officially being supported on M3 Macs, which I find rather surprising.
I guess I kind of thought it had already been because
This
they
is what
already
I'm
accepted
saying.
it.
This is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I mean, when the M1 series came out, all right,
Hmm.
3-4 years ago, everybody thought, well, okay, Apple isn't going to include the virtual machine experience because it was one of the things that they said that they were dropping.
Right.
And they were also
Yep.
killing off Boot Camp. And so there's no way to either A, natively run Windows on a Mac anymore, and B, it's sort of sounded like it was the end of Parallels and the VMware product, and I'm blanking on its name right now,
Oh,
but both,
VMware, yeah, the desktop, the Fusion desktop, yeah.
Fusion, VMware Fusion, yes, thank you.
Right.
And it really sounded like it was going to be the end of both of those, but Parallels came out and said, no, we've got it, and we're supporting
And so has VMware
Windows
now
on ARM
since.
through this product on the Mac M series chips. I don't understand what this really means now.
Well, I don't get it either, and I've went through the the links that we're showing and sharing with folks, and I kind of went, well, you're already running it. What's the deal?
Yeah, why are we running this up the flagpole and saluting and gathering other people around and pointing?
And for folks who don't know, and I'll add this to the mix, when it initially came out, when Parallels first came out and said, "Hey, we can do this," you were able to basically go to Microsoft, you could download a trial of Windows 11 for ARM, and you could run it on there.
Right.
Microsoft at the time said, "Yeah, we're not supporting that," and they didn't for a while, and then then one day they said, "Yes, we'll support this. This makes perfect sense. This is great."
Absolutely.
And it was kind of like, okay, you've changed your mind. Once they did that,
right,
this to me seems like, yeah, what is this actually telling me? As opposed to what we thought we already had.
Right.
What wasn't working on the M3 based Macs? What didn't happen? Now they did drop support. You don't do 32-bit Windows for ARM apps anymore. Those aren't supported, and there weren't that many of those out there anyway. But so you got to have a 64-bit ARM app, or an x64 app, or an x86 app to run on a Mac if you're going to do Windows.
Correct.
So that's not any different. They dropped that a while ago, so I don't think that's any big deal. So I'm not sure, but if I'm glad it runs. You do have to have a decent amount of RAM in your Mac.
You do,
because the virtual machine does take up overhead. So.
Well, everybody that needs to understand that if you're going to use something like Parallels, all right, in order to power the virtual computer that you are allowing your Mac to also run, all right, you're going to need processor cores, and you're going to need available RAM. All right. So you've only got one physical computer, so you're giving some of your processor and some of your RAM over to this virtual thing that's going to run these Windows apps. So you have to have enough to share.
So I'm guessing the part of the support for the M3 as opposed to its predecessors is some of the newer NPU configurations and things like that. There's some slight differences, and maybe it's just that they've added those in the mix
to bounce you back and forth between what you're doing on Windows and what you're doing on a Mac.
Sure.
And within the processing.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's I don't think it's that it wouldn't run before. I think it's just about some of those kind of underlying hardware features are being supported better or something like that. I think that's more what it is.
Everybody is officially saying now that
everybody is officially saying we can do this.
We can do this, and if you have problems, yes, we will address them.
Yeah, and Parallels has done a fairly good job on the M series chips. They really have done it fairly. It's not perfect. There's some things about it that I think are a little messier than they need to be, but it's
come together quite a bit in the last 3 or so years.
It has. Well, the VMware solution was always very clean. The Parallel solution is not as clean, but what it is it's more feature laden. And so that's the trade-off you make with their answers. But they work very well. So either way things work very, very well. So people need to understand that it's supported now. That's a good thing. It's officially supported. Everybody says they're official now.
Right.
You no longer have to hold back if you wanted it.
Yes. So smoke them if you got them. There you go.
Smoke them if you got them.
That's it. You know what I think is also interesting that I've also heard a little bit about in the Windows realm is that there's this new thing out there right now called a Windows 11 AI PC. All
Yeah.
right.
Oh yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I know. And there's talk of a specific
You
co-pilot
know, by the
button
way,
on the
guys, we
keyboard.
really have that old bunch of old guys sitting in the park playing chess toned to us
Yes.
now. We're very good
Yes.
at that.
With
Thank you.
regard to AI, we certainly do.
We
Yes.
do. We've all gone and we've beaten this horse over and over. And I sorry to use that terrible image, but this is we're all exhausted from talking about AI. We really are. But
Yep.
it keeps coming up.
The reason why we are tired of talking about AI is that nothing is proven yet.
No.
Nothing is really not it has not evolved past the erector set stage, if you will.
No, but
All
more
right.
importantly, what everybody's doing is adding on an AI component, adding on an AI subscription. They're trying to use AI to get into your pocketbook. That's it.
Well, I was going to say they're all trying to monetize something that isn't fully fleshed out yet.
Right. And
Exactly. And that's what bothers me
Yep.
the most about this. Microsoft, I believe, is probably about 3 to 5 years early on this whole AI PC thing.
I think that's true.
Yep.
All right. It this needs to sit and
Well, yeah,
and ferment a little bit.
and we get this whole notion of it's like you're slapping the name AI on everything, and you're slapping some, I'm going to call them AI features, but they're really just enhanced logic, if you will. And
Yes.
you're tacking it onto everything and putting that label on it and charging for it. And
Yes.
it's like, okay, you really haven't given me anything I didn't already have.
Oh, I
It's just,
totally agree.
you know,
I
it's very,
totally
very
agree. You may
maddening.
have look, lipstick on a pig. The pig is still a pig.
Yeah, it's
All
still a
right.
pig,
True.
kids.
All right.
You know, it
It's
really
still a pig.
is.
It's still ugly. All right. So all I'm going to say is this, you know, there an AI PC, which is effectively little to nothing more than Microsoft Copilot inserting itself in front of you in a number of different areas, where it feels it can cut some corners for you.
mostly it's forcing itself, not inserting.
It
It's
is.
I
forcing
would
itself.
say that's fair. You're right, Larry.
Right.
It is.
All right.
But I don't even know if it's forcing you because there isn't anything there that's there that wasn't there before. So they're just saying,
Well, they're forcing a new way of getting at those things to you.
well, that's true.
All right.
That you're right.
They're forcing that on you. All right. Hey, you want to know what the weather is? Don't go to weather.com. Ask Copilot. Copilot will get it
Well,
for you.
and even if
know?
you want to do things like, let's say you use Microsoft Start, which is their news app, you're being forced into a bunch of AI things in it now. There's
Right.
like a Bing AI, you know, Copilot, if you will. It's all
Right.
kind of tied into that now. Why do I need that tied into my news app?
You know,
Really?
just this morning, I read a really good example of this with, I won't mention the name, I really won't, but it was an email plugin. So if you kiddies want to write an email to your team and tell them that you're going to do this, that, and the other, let this component do it for only $6.99 a month. You'll have this available to you. And I thought,
Oh,
only
wow.
for nothing a month, I can go to OpenAI and plug my password in and write the same thing.
Right.
Right.
So
Right.
what are they giving? They're not giving us anything.
Or shutter, going to google.com and searching for it on my own.
Right. Or just writing it myself.
Thank you. You know,
Oh dear.
They're trying to wrap it up to look pretty, and it's just not.
they are, but
But to go back to what you said, Chris, I think that there will be something we want to talk about
there will
in the
be
future.
yes.
But we're not there yet. And
We're
what
not.
they've got is just not, you're not ready to pay. I'm not ready to pay for any of this. It's not developed enough to mean anything.
It's
Right.
not it's not baked enough.
Right.
It's
You're
not.
It's a toy.
You're charging
Well-
me. You're charging me. Yeah, for a dish of cake dough, you know, cake batter.
Right.
You know,
As opposed
I don't
to a
have-
full
as
piece of
opposed to a
cake. Yes.
And it's
Right.
like, I'm looking at it going, well, why would I want that? You know,
Mhm.
so
Exactly. But the big thing here that we're talking, I don't want to get too far afield.
and more
All right.
subscriptions, by the way, guys, more subscriptions is what
More
they want.
subscriptions, yes. So, but Microsoft has indicated that Windows 11 AI PCs, and now you know what an AI PC is. All right.
Mhm.
And Windows 12, which is supposed to be out sometime in 2024, all right, will require 16 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah, that's a
And
move
based
up.
on everything that we've said, what do you think, Chris?
Yeah.
It's doing
is
it
the
to
extra
support the
RAM
AI.
required? Is it really required, or is
No.
Well, that's a good question. So it depends on what, see, and then this gets back to how baked is the process. So you could argue that a lot of quote unquote AI type processes, or what they're calling AI processes, or
right?
what could be AI processes, could require RAM. I get it.
Right.
There's overhead. They could require to have
Sure.
certain features. You might need more RAM to operate those features. If you're going to do some of these graphic manipulations in your photo programs, you might want to have a little more RAM available to you. I get all
Sure.
that. I get it.
Sure.
But is it required in the day-to-day operations for me to do a freaking search using Copilot? Of course not. So they have not made, and this gets back to what I said with Apple and the Vision Pro. The same thing's true. They haven't made the case for us yet. They need to make the case. They need to sell it to us, not just
I
tell us we're
agree.
doing, not just tell us we're doing it. Tell us why I want you to do it. Why do I want to pay a subscription, or why do I want to buy a PC with more RAM? What am I going to get if I do that?
Mhm.
Well,
So-
in essence, though, they are giving you the case. They just want you to find the use. That's the
Well,
problem.
no, but they haven't. So I'll give you what I mean, Larry. So when it comes to Windows for ARM, for example, okay, they've made a case with some of these newer Windows for ARM when they released the Surface Pro 9 with the 5G. They immediately would show you, okay, if you have this, you have a PC that has an NPU in it. Oh, by the way, look what we can do. We can do noise filtering in all your calls. We can do this background stuff in hardware. It's much smoother than when you're doing it only in software. Here's what it does for you. Here's why you want this
They
thing.
just haven't told us yet here.
And they
I think
haven't
they
done that
will.
with
I think
this.
Well, they
will.
haven't shown us
Or
either.
shown
They haven't
us.
shown us that with
All
this
right.
yet. Why do I care? Why do I care enough
Mhm.
to add the RAM? Why do I care enough to want an AI PC
Why
as
do I,
opposed to
why,
standard
what is
PC?
AI going to give me?
Well,
All
no,
right.
but more specifically, not AI, because that's too broad a term, right? So in general, you could say, yeah, that, but we don't really know what that means yet. That means different things to different people. My question
Thank
is
you.
more specifically, what is Microsoft bringing to the table?
Yep.
Forget the label AI. What are they bringing to the table in this newer Windows 11 and Windows 12 that makes it so that I need to have more RAM? Remember the argument when Windows came out? Oh crap! My brain shut down. Just before Windows 7.
Windows Vista?
Vista. Thank you.
This-
And it had heavier hardware
Heavier
requirements
graphics, right.
because there were things going on with the graphics, and it was really obvious. Oh, we're going to drive harder graphics, and it's going to be better to look at, and all that kind of thing. So in order to do that, you need a better graphics card. You need more RAM. There was a case made for it, even though Vista was a failure. As it wasn't. I mean, Vista did what it said it would do.
Right.
If you had the right hardware to drive it. So
and the
people
question
understood
that the
People
question you
understood
just
that.
asked, the question you just asked of Microsoft has absolutely nothing to do with how I use AI, and I actually do use it for
Yeah.
writing. It works well. Has nothing to do with a PC. Nothing at all.
No, nothing
Absolutely
at all.
true.
And so, but that's one aspect of AI,
So
or one use
your
case
question
for.
was very fair of
Yeah.
Microsoft.
So
there.
tell me what it is you're going to do with it that requires this. What is it you need, and why do I care about that?
Right.
You know, and they haven't made that case to me, as far as I can tell. Nothing I've read makes that case. Not in any kind of real coherent way, anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but having said that, the requirement they say is going to be to go to 16 gig of RAM. I would argue, folks, if you're buying a new PC today, you should be buying 16 gig of RAM anyway.
Right,
absolutely.
right.
So,
Yeah,
and it
I
has
mean-
nothing to do with AI. I just feel that
No, that has nothing to do with
smoothly.
AI. And I would agree. And I would say that
Same.
16 gigabytes is probably the minimum that I would get. But if you really want decent performance,
Mhm,
I'd look at
mhm.
32 to 48
I'm
if you can
totally with
swing
you.
it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally with you on it. That,
There's
Yeah.
not
you
a
know,
PC that I bought in the last probably 10 years that hasn't had 16 gigabytes or better.
yeah, me too.
Right.
Me too.
Agree.
So, that's just general advice, has nothing to do with what Microsoft is saying. So,
Right? Yeah.
True. But all I'm gonna say is, all right, we're gonna wait and see what AI brings us. There are probably going to be some hardware enhancements that you're going to need, like a neural engine or a specific kind of processor that
well,
has a neural engine.
and Intel is bringing neural engines to some of their newer processors that are coming out. We certainly
Right.
see this coming out of the newer ARM devices. ARM devices already have neural engines
Right.
in them,
Right.
and the newer ones are going to have just better ones. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, didn't we also see not ARM and not Intel, AMD? Aren't they doing it during a neural engine as well in their stuff?
I believe they are. I believe
So
they are.
I mean, everybody thinks you got to do a neural engine to do AI. You don't.
Nope.
It just it enhances and improves the performance of those things. But neural engines do other things. They assist the graphic cards. They assist
Right.
other features within the computer. So it's more of a general purpose kind of thing. But we're going to see that coming out, and that would justify to me maybe increasing the RAM or justify increasing the price of the PC a little bit. I get all that. So, but right now, Microsoft, you haven't made a use case for me. Not an AI use case for me anyway.
No, I would agree. But, and I think the advice that we're
The
giving
general advice,
in
yeah,
general goes 16 gigabytes of RAM, period. And if you
or
can
more.
afford more, and if you can afford
Yeah.
more, do it, because you're
Yeah,
likely not going to be able to upgrade that PC later on.
right. They're not as
Yep.
upgradable as
Do
they
it.
used to be. That's for sure.
Do it.
Yep.
All right. Well, that, kids, is effectively, basically, the show. All right. I want to go ahead now and move us to our pick of the week segment. But before we get there, I just want to take a moment and remind everyone that our show picks are typically hardware and software and other items of interest that we have individually purchased and actually used, and that we like enough that we want to recommend them to you, our growing listener base. These are not paid advertisements. These are not items that we have any kind of an affiliated marketing relationship with. These are seriously things that we sincerely believe in, and we want to bring them to you at the end of each show. Why?
Because we
Because
like
we
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this week, Larry, you've got the pick.
I have the pick.
And what do you got? You got something different for us today.
I got something a little different, but then again, it fits in the category of something we all probably should use or
Mhm.
have used. They didn't really make their public debut until sometime at the front end of the pandemic. About a year into the pandemic, pulse oximeters were something that we found out we really needed to either buy or go to the doctor and get our pulse read or whatever. But I actually sat down with my doctor, and I have a pretty good relationship. And I was talking with her about a year into the pandemic. I had my first in-person appointment with her, and I said, hey, let me ask you a question about that little thing that stuck, the nurse stuck on my finger. Should I get one of those? And she looked at me and she said, you don't have one? I said, no. She said, well, the answer then is yes, because short of a blood pressure indicator machine, this is equally, if not more important. If it's off, it can indicate some serious issues. I mean, if you're, and every, I can't quote numbers here because everybody's different, but if you're down below X number, she said, you need to call me right now and we'll make plans because something's wrong. So I went out and bought one. And, 2 years ago, 2 years before the pandemic, you couldn't find one of these on Amazon. And now there's 48 million of them popping up all over Amazon. So she advised me, though, the big problem is there are so many of them out there that are not accurate. And she actually recommended this one. She said, this is as good, every bit as good as the ones we here in this office pay nearly $300 for. There's no difference in accuracy and quality. and you need to go get one. So I said, okay, I will. So it basically, it's about a $39 thing. Price fluctuates from day to day. It's been down to 34, I think, but it's made by a company named Innovo. And if you read a little bit about them, they actually have a vision and they actually have some medical people on their staff, unlike some Amazon products.
So
And
Larry,
they
Larry,
actually think that their product is the best, and I might agree with that. But
do,
I've
do
never, I
we,
can't. Yeah, go ahead.
do me a favor. So for everybody in general, explain what this does as opposed to what the blood ox on an Apple Watch or other might do for you.
Well, I'm actually going to kind of give you a quick
Awesome.
rundown of that in just a
Thank
minute
you.
here. But I was kind of doing an overview of why they thought their product was unique. This product is one of the few oximeters that will not give you a reading unless it's perfect. It's all the stars have to align. You know, if your finger's too cold, and we've all tried this probably, if your finger's cold and you try to take your pulse with this thing, it won't. I mean, your oximeter readings, it won't work. So this one will let you know what you need to do. It'll give you indications about do this, do that. Because of that, they say it's way more reliable because any reading you get on it is in fact accurate, as opposed to many of these which cost much less. And right out of the box, this thing is absolutely accurate.
Awesome.
Comes with its own software. If you want to install it, you really don't need it. But one of the things this has is something that I can barely pronounce, but it's not that hard to understand. It's called a plasmograph reading, along with a PI reading, and that is the perfusion index. None of these things matter to you. The only thing matters about them is if the oximeter you're using uses these, it's a good one. If it doesn't say it has these two things, don't buy it. It's that simple. If it doesn't have PI and plasmograph, don't buy the product. So bottom line is, this is something for about 35, 40 bucks that if you take maybe use it every couple, 3 or 4 days, doesn't take but a few seconds. You know, most of us, our blood oxygen should be up around, anywhere from 100 down to 96. If it's lower than that, if it's below 90, anybody should be seeking medical
Thank you.
help.
Thank you.
Right.
Because I was going to say, if you weren't going to say it, I was going to say, look,
Yeah, you absolutely.
your reading should be 95 or better.
It
Period.
should be, right.
Should be 95% or better. If it is not, then you might want to think about calling your doctor. If it's below
Yeah.
90, forget that. Go to the
Right.
ER.
Just go
And
to
I
ER.
would say this is a critical device
I'm
for
with
you
you,
to
Joel.
for you to have. Well, I don't think it's necessarily one that every single person needs to have. It's probably not a bad idea, but what I do want to say is, if you are diagnosed with sleep apnea, this is definitely something you want to have, because this is
Right.
one of the things that they check every single doctor's visit. I would hesitate to say you'd probably want to test this after every night. Which is why I'm glad my Pixel Watch has it integrated into the sleep tracking.
Yes.
So
Right,
Yes.
but that's what I was trying to ask earlier. I have that on
Right.
my Apple Watch. Why do I need this? What does this do for me?
Well, I
So-
do
Yeah.
think this will be more accurate, Chris. The
I
other will
think
give
so
you
too.
a
Be true.
good indication. It's fine. And what's the difference between 95 and 94? Probably nothing. But and what you're using may well indicate below 90, so that would be time for you to go get some
Right.
help. So I think it's probably more for those who are a little more worried about it or need it for their own health reasons. And
Correct.
according to my doctor, those of us who are over 60, and even some of you guys are getting close on that number. I know
Yeah, we're
you're not
breathing on it
old.
pretty hard.
Yes, we are.
Some of us are there.
So
Yeah.
Some of us are wheezing on it pretty hard. Yes.
Right. It'll give you an early indication of oncoming heart difficulties, not necessarily major problems. This is one of the biggest indicators of COPD that exists. So
Yeah.
if you start getting low readings with this, you may find yourself dragging an oxygen tank around with you, but better to drag that than not be able to drag it, period.
Amen.
So for
Amen.
35, 40 bucks and about a minute's worth of your time at night, I take mine every night now. And it's always good. It's always up around 99. I actually hit 100 a couple of times. So I'm not worried, but I feel better. That's all. I just feel better doing it.
Yeah. And
So it's a
as
peace of
far
mind
as
thing.
your Apple Watch or any other device, you're going to get a better and more accurate number with the device that Larry's talking about as opposed to your smartwatch. Clearly, your smartwatch is meant just to go ahead, like like your EKG or your
Yeah, right.
heart rate kind of thing.
right.
It's meant to be
They're
just
not exact, right?
it's meant to
Well,
be a red flag raiser.
we
It's
say
a red
that,
flag.
but,
Wave that flag and say, hey, you
Yep.
might need to do something.
but let me
This
add
is
this.
accurate. This is
My
hospital.
cardiologist did tell me you
Excuse
can't
me.
get any more accurate than an Apple Watch for pulse rate. You can't do it.
No.
It's just as accurate as anything he has.
Well, I will tell you that this is hospital grade. All right. This is a hospital grade device. And
Right.
if you've got moderate to severe asthma, if you have COPD, if you are prone to bronchitis a lot during the winter, or if you've got any other kind of pulmonary related issues, if you don't have a pulse oximeter, then you need to go and get one. If you don't have any kind of a smart watch that will raise that flag.
One
and
other
wake-
thing that is very, very unique about this, or about some of these, the better ones, no matter how you put it on, upside down, no matter how you look at it, it has a gyrometer in it. It'll show you.
It'll
the
flip
reading.
things around.
It'll
so it
flip
shows you
around
what you want. Yeah.
automatically for
Well,
you.
and I guess what I want to say is, that I deliberately kind of asked the question that I did, because here's the thing: if it does something I already have, but it does a better job of it,
Right.
then I probably, especially as I get older, I want it. Even if so what I'm saying is, okay, the Apple Watch is on, I can check anytime. I just tend to hit the button, away I go. For those of us who keep having the feature in our watches anyway.
Right.
But having said that, maybe once a day or maybe once every few days, I want to get a
I
better
agree.
reading. I want to get a
Right.
better, more consistent thing. So that's
The
reason
watch
enough for
gives
me,
you an
guys.
indication, and this will give you exact.
Right.
Yeah, so
this
I think that's
would
a
give
good
you
reason
if,
right
if
there.
your watch raises the flag, you slip this thing on your
Yeah.
finger and you go, okay, it's time to do this.
Yeah,
So
I think that's
Right.
where I was going. I want to get
Yeah.
a reason why we would do that if
Yeah.
we have these other things.
Yeah.
And there's a very good reason, clearly.
yes,
Thank
your
you.
health, and it's very important.
My health.
Yeah,
Eh.
well,
That's it basically.
Yeah.
Mhm.
so all right, kids, that is the show. This has been the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 74, the Mac at 40. Now, that's a computer I'd like to. Recorded live Sunday, January 21st, live from iTechGear Central.
Oh,
As I
my.
said, I'm Christopher Spera, and for Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin, Mr. Chris Gavula, and brother Joel McLaughlin, I want to say we will see you all next time.